Hello, and thank you for watching this regional forecast for the Canadian Prairie. I'm Andrew Pritchard, meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, warm temperatures do continue across the prairie, with this pattern favoring cooler conditions in Alaska, cooler conditions up toward Greenland, but again, anomalously warm conditions across the Canadian Prairie. We'll be dealing with clipper systems making their way through, bringing a little bit of light snow at times. The hot spot here, where we can see 5 to 10 centimeters of snow, is going to be from portions of primarily east central Alberta, getting into central portions of Saskatchewan. We'll talk about some forecast snow amounts here in a moment. Now, we do have a storm system making its way off to the north of the prairie, dropping some snow across, again, areas along the Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then eventually Manitoba's northern borders. As we look at the radar right now, maybe some light snow flurries falling just south of Grand Prairie, but otherwise the radar fairly quiet across the Canadian Prairie. Now, the high-resolution forecast from the Canadian model, again, we can watch this first system track well north of the prairie as we head through the day today into tonight. As we head into early Saturday morning, we're going to start watching, again, that corridor from east-central Alberta getting into central and southern Saskatchewan for some snow flurries associated with our first little clipper system that's going to eventually dive down into parts of the U.S. So through the day on Saturday into Saturday night, some light snow across this region. We'll call it east-central Alberta, and then following the corridor then down into central and southern Saskatchewan, and perhaps portions of far southern Manitoba. Again, that happening starting in the west on Saturday morning, through the day on Saturday now, and then into Saturday night. Now, the upper level pattern overall, what I want you to notice, the very strong winds blasting in from the Pacific, and then we've got a strong subtropical jet stream here across the southeastern U.S. Pattern like that is going to continue to blast portions of British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest with heavy precipitation. Could keep things active at times across the southeastern U.S. In between there, from the Canadian Prairie into the Midwest, we're talking about clipper systems making their way from the prairie into the Great Lakes, bringing with them at times light snow through this corridor. As we play a loop of 24-hour or 12-hour precipitation, again, you're seeing the very heavy precipitation here being deposited in British Columbia, parts of Washington and Oregon, just little clipper systems making their way up and over the top of that flow. And then here's the active subtropical jet stream here at times bringing precipitation to parts of the southeastern U.S. The pattern also keeps cold air from intruding here across the prairie and across the northern plains of the U.S. as we still get temperature anomalies all the way through the end of the month. Again, cold air across Canada, cold air here across parts of Greenland. Otherwise, looking at warmth across the Canadian Prairie into the Midwest. As we take a look at the precipitation type forecast, we'll take this all the way back to Friday, bringing it back here to Friday morning, watching this system kind of riding the northern borders of the prairies, and then as we get into Friday, as we get into Saturday, then into Sunday, watching for some very light snow to sneak off across southern portions of the area. We'll then head into Monday and Tuesday, watching again for the potential for some very light snow across the prairie. It's as we get into the end of next week. This is when I've got some question marks as far as what's happening with the pattern. We're seeing some advertisement that maybe we see some troughing across this region. Maybe we see some colder temperatures moving into this region, and perhaps we see a more substantial storm system bringing some heavier snow to portions of the prairie. Big question marks, though. That is all the way out here towards the end of the month. We're talking 7 days into the future. So we'll watch that one closely, understanding the uncertainty within it. Looking at the 7-day precipitation anomaly forecast, once again just highlighting the very heavy precipitation in coastal and high elevation areas of British Columbia into the northwestern United States. Not dry by any stretch of the imagination here across the prairie. I'm not, promising that we have a week of dry conditions. It's just that we have a week of relatively light precipitation, perhaps frequent opportunities for that very light snow, but the actual accumulating snow will be fairly far between here. And likely, as we talk about the next 5 days or so, I would say the best chance for that accumulating snow lies within this storm system over the next 24 to 36 hours. That should drop the corridor of very light snow here across this region. Slight differences between the handling of these different clipper systems, and that is to be expected. The models don't handle these kind of weaker, more subtle clippers that are kind of coming out of the flow over the Rockies and into the prairie. As we just talk about some of the cities across the region, my forecast amount here, I would say over the next 5 days as we look at conditions through Into Friday of next week. Calgary, probably close to zero, maybe a trace of snow here, a light coating. Medicine Hat, close to a trace as well. Edmonton, maybe more like 2 to 5 centimeters. Saskatoon, that's the high spot. I think 5 to 10 centimeters of snow is likely here over the next 5 days or so. A good chunk of that falls here during the day on Saturday. Regina, trace to 2 centimeters, and then all the way over in Winnipeg, talking about around 2 to 5 centimeters of snow over the next 5 days or so. Temperatures continuing to be about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius above average as we head through the next week as well. Calgary, then your high temperatures for the next few days, all the way into early next week, above freezing, bouncing around between 1 or 2 degrees and 5 degrees on the high side. As we talk about Edmonton, very similar, kind of flirting with the freezing line. Saskatoon, just a couple degrees below freezing for your highs over the next few days, right around -1 to -3 degrees with overnight lows between -5 and -10. Regina, similar story, highs near zero, overnight lows between -5 and -10. And then a warming trend as we talk about things over here in Winnipeg. High temps around -7 today, but all the way up to the freezing mark by the time we get to Monday.